proposition's name, Alice in Wonderland, it seemed quite appropriate, as evidenced by the socialist utopia she appeared to be residing in, as well as the other member of her team. Now, I'm just going to get into a bit of clash with these ideals and values that they brought up. They brought up the idea that we're going to raise everyone to this level. We want to raise everyone to the level of private healthcare. But herein lies the problem of their logic. Herein lies the socialist utopia. Because once we remove the profit incentive from these private companies, once we eliminate the aspect of private healthcare, we no longer get this improvement in medical care and quality. So in fact, we're just going to be decreasing everyone to the same level, and we're not going to see an improvement. And they brought the idea that if everyone protests at this time, if all the doctors and nurses protest, there's going to be change, there's going to be improvement. But the fact that this is an effective way to bring about change, and in fact, it's an irrelevant way to bring about change, simply because these are central personnel, and they are not allowed to strike. So this would not simply be a drawback of the public system. And so there lies my confusion of why we were arguing for the private sector, where in fact this is not a problem, and is one with significant advantages. They brought one idea that it's going to improve, that we improve the public system by remaining the status quo. But the problem is currently we have a system of zero competition. So we can't improve the level of our healthcare without taking this into account. And so they brought up the value of no one should have better healthcare. It should all be at precisely the same level. But the problem is that this can be applied to anything. Schooling, housing. But the problem is, but beyond a basic universal service that we all provide, there is no reason why someone should not be allowed to have a larger house. And in fact, if we mandate that everyone, and we stipulate that everyone has the same quality of goods and services, we're going to be seeing that we're going to bring everyone down to the same level. It also brought up the aspect of the private sector to compete with the poor market, yes.
But is healthcare not a very essential service that is integral to someone's quality of life?
Certainly, as is food, housing. All of these things are not involved in this idea of a socialist paradise. So we don't see why the idea that everyone should have the exact same quality of medical service should apply in this situation. Another thing which they brought up is they brought up the idea that the poor aren't going to be included. The private sector isn't going to think about them. They're not going to compete for their market. But the problem is that the private sector would ignore a very large market like this because of their private profit incentive. There's going to be a market available, and although it will be different, it's certainly not going to be a market which will be entirely ignored. Now, at this point, I'd just like to get into our third point, that of the point of innovation. Now, I'd like to ask you of the idea of the United States. They are at the forefront of medical development and innovation, and I must ask you why. The reason why is because of the profit incentive inherent in the private industry. There's pharmaceutical corporations, and there's medical corporations, which pump billions of dollars in research and development, which the government simply cannot do because of its inherent nature. So what we're seeing that the idea of that innovation is caused by the private sector. We're seeing this profit incentive is causing people to increase their research and development. We're seeing miracles happening every day. So I'm just going to give you an example after I do this POI.
So why have the poor not seen this miraculous increase in quality?
And in fact, they are. Now, I'm just going to get into this example I was going to say. Now, in about the 1950s, insulin used to be fabricated from pigs. It was a very expensive process, and only the very rich could afford it on a regular basis. Now, what we discovered from a private corporation acting in their own self-interest is that we can synthesize insulin very cheaply from bacteria. What this means is, it essentially means that there's a bleed out to poor people. There's a bleed out to the public sector. If we improve the quality of healthcare in private corporations, if we have these medical breakthroughs, which we do every day, it's going to bleed out to the public sector. We're going to see some overlap here, and we're going to be seeing that the quality of life on all sides is going to improve because of this powerful force for change at this time. The fact is, medical discoveries are made by three sectors: accidental discoveries, from universities, and by corporations. And accidental discoveries are getting more and more rare. Universities require a lot of public funding. Not to say that we can't do both, but they have corporations is a vast untapped resource, especially in Canada, which we could do. We could, once we do this, we're going to cause our medical industry to go from stagnation to innovation. And this is something which is going to be good for everyone, not just rich people, but for poor and for the public healthcare system. So for these reasons, we beg to oppose. Thank you.